Nigeria is at a crossroad as the nation begins counting down to its next general elections in 2023. At the recently held 19th Daily Trust Dialogue in Abuja, the 20th Sultan of Sokoto, Muhammadu Sa'ad Abubakar III, said politics is too important to be left to the politicians alone, considering its significance to the nation's economy, security, and other segments of the society. One of the consensus at the event was the need for Nigeria to elect credible leaders beyond primordial sentiments. But how Nigeria can emplace good leadership in the coming election against the backdrop of the existing political structure remains a puzzle yet to be unraveled. Concepts such as zoning, godfatherism, vote buying, political toggery, among others, continue to dominate the political atmosphere each time the country approaches an election year. In an attempt to strengthen Nigeria's democracy, the National Assembly has amended the Electoral Act, recognizing electronic voting. However, with the debate over the mode of nominating leaders at the party level yet to be concluded, we ask the question, can Nigeria's political structure here, deliver dividends of democracy to Nigerians? How important is the recruitment process of political leaders to redirecting the country towards national growth and development? And how can Nigeria strengthen its political structure and other issues? Now, these are the issues of focus today on the program. Thank you for joining us. I am Aiwailia. Now, before we begin the discussions, let's take a look at highlights from the 19th Daily Trust Dialogue.
Is the impending inter-party crisis. This is going to have a major impact on political competition and the manner in which the political environment is either heated or managed. It is going to happen. It is going to be a major development. The quality and disposition of contestants, kind of people who are coming out every day, because we have created a false idea that the 2023 elections is about Igbo or Yoruba or Northern. Just about everybody is coming out to say, I want to be president. Well, that is very dangerous for this country. They have cheapened this country. If you look at the kind of candidates who are coming out and say, I want to be president, simply because you said it's going to be an Igbo person or Yoruba person who has to be another, it's frightening. This country doesn't need an ethnic president. It needs a president who can actually physically turn this country around. That's what we need. But because we have lowered the bar, look at the kind of people who are coming out to say, I want to be president. That is very dangerous and very bad for this country.
Well, there you have it. Now, to give perspectives to these issues, I have joining me in the studio Faith Nwadishi, Executive Director, Center for Transparency Advocacy. Welcome to the program today.
Thank you so much for having me. Good day, Nigerians.
Yeah, well, quite a number of issues. We begin with a look at the electoral amendment of 2021. A lot of issues, were raised. And then here comes this debate about the mode of nominating candidates for elections, whether direct or indirect, and that lingered for quite a while, taking a lot of time. What's your response to this debate as we have it at the moment? The Senate has said, well, they agree to direct, indirect, and consensus. On the other hand, the House of Representatives says direct or indirect and nothing more. So what's your own stand, from the organization that you represent?
First and foremost, let me commend the National Assembly for understanding that we have an emergency. We had an emergency in the fact that about a year to our next national election, we don't have an electoral act. And so they took it upon themselves to begin the amendment, considering that the president had declined assent based on the mode of transmission. We didn't want to have what we had in 2019, where the president didn't have to sign that. But the way there was a meeting of the House of Representatives and the Senate, where they finally agreed on indirect and direct. There was a lot of controversy around having the consensus candidacy, but they have agreed that there should be the indirect and direct primaries. Because without doing that, a lot of the political parties will have to go back to their constitution to change their constitution. Some of the political parties have within their constitution indirect primaries, and that's what we have been seeing. But there was a little bit of modification to what they have agreed to do. Now, in the past, what you see in direct primaries is that you have delegates elected at delegates meeting when they will now go to a national convention to elect the presidential candidate. Now, for you to elect a presidential candidate, you will have to have mini conventions in the 36 states of the federation, including the federal capital. And then the person with the highest vote, you will have a national convention where that vote will be ratified. Unlike in the past, where you have a whole day where elections are held to elect your party representative for a national convention. Now you have to do, if you're doing indirect primaries, you have to do those mini conventions in the 36 states, including the federal capital, and then come to rectify. So no elections will be held at the national convention. It is only ratification that will now be done. That's a little modification to what they have agreed to send to the president. In fact, the chairman of the Senate, the president of the Senate actually said before the end of next week they will transmit that. So that's a welcome development, the fact that these issues were raised and it was attended to. Now, people talked about what it will cost them to hold direct primaries, because direct primaries means every registered member of your political party from ward level will have the opportunity to vote for whoever your candidate would be. So this little variation that they have come out, and for me, when that came up at our organizational level, what we saw was that it is possible to have people-centered laws passed as quickly as possible. We don't have to have laws stay 20 years, 30 years, 11 years on the floor of the National Assembly. It means that with the political will of the members of the National Assembly, we can have laws that affect our lives. For instance, the Freedom of Information Law took about 11 years to pass. The Petroleum Industry Act took about 20 years to pass. Now, the president declined assent in December, and now we are having in January already the members of the National Assembly have looked at the amendment and they are sending it back. So it means that any law that affects the welfare of Nigerians, the generality of Nigerians, the political will is there for the legislature to ensure that we get that law passed without any politics or sentiments around that.
Are you confident that the president will assent to this bill? I mean, we saw that initially when it was transmitted to him, in fact, the time limit within which he has to assent or decline assent even, expired before he eventually gave a response to it. So looking at the timing that we have left, I mean, INEC says without an electoral act, we cannot even have a timetable.
That's true.
So how, how much time do we have, and what's your, confidence on whether
before we went on break in December, we actually said the National Assembly should quickly look at the law and amend it and send it back to the president within 30 days. And they've been able to do that. We're expecting that in the next week they should transmit, because they have actually finished, they have agreed. The consensus part of it is taken out. It's no longer part, they have taken that out. So they have agreed for direct and indirect primaries to be the mode of electing or getting your party representatives. So both the lower chambers and the upper chambers have agreed to that. It's about the drafts men and women who are going to do that. But my concern, in 2019, when the president declined assent to the Electoral Act in 2019, he mentioned issues around irregularities, typographical errors, and we see that again. So we are hoping that beyond just looking at that clause that talks about, I think that's section 87 or so, that talks about the mode of electing your party candidate, the people who are in charge of drafting that law should go back and do a second editing. Make sure that there are no conflicting statements in the law. Make sure that you don't have typographical errors, grammatical errors, and confusing components of that law, such that after the election, people would be left to interpret the meaning of the letter of the law. Because these are some of the things that cause the long litigations that we get after elections. So these are some things that we have advised that the members of the National Assembly, especially the drafting committee, the drafting team, should look at before sending that bill back to the the president. And I'm sure that the president, having sent that bill back and mentioned, this time around, he didn't mention issues around errors. He was only concerned about the mode of electing the party candidates, which has been ratified now and even modified with clauses added on how you go about that. I think the president will have to say that's something he has to give to us, because that's what he has promised us forever, that when he leaves office, he wants to leave a credible electoral process. He wants to ensure that the electoral process is cleaned up. And you know, since 2015 till date, there has been incremental progress and improvement in our electoral processes, especially the technological aspect of it, ensuring that our votes count, trying to gain the trust and interest of Nigerians, trying to reduce issues around voter apathy. The electoral umpire has been doing its best, but we have not seen reciprocal effort from the political class. And I say it is a political class who are the beneficiaries of whatever processes, whoever gets elected into, you are the eventual beneficiary of that process. So they're the ones who are supposed to put 110% interest and effort in ensuring that these processes are cleaned up. Now, we just came back from the Anambra election where we saw that the new technology that INEC is deploying, it worked, you understand that, and people commended that effort to do that. And also we have seen that for the first time from 2015, we are now carrying out continuous voter registration as prescribed in the Electoral Act. It says continuous. So it's no longer the ad hoc one. We do 60 days, 60 days before the election, you have to stop voters registration. But this has been going on. The voters register has now been opened again for people to go back to register. So there's been incremental progress in the process. But the fundamental thing is that you don't build on nothing. You don't build on nothing. And when I say you don't build on nothing, is that we've had this law, the amended law in 2010, and this is a law we have been using, which was used in 2014, used in 2015, used in 2019, and there's a lot of evolution that needs to be captured. For instance, electronic voting. You know, in 2015, 2019, a lot of people went to court to contest that. Yes. Now, but people forget that the Electoral Act says that the electoral umpire can give a guideline on how to conduct some of these elections. So we are happy.
So now
that,
it's categorically spelled out. Yes. That, you remember before the bill was passed in the first place, there was this debate around transmission of results or no transmission of results. Now we have an INEC that has built an election viewing portal such that as soon as results are declared at world level, they are uploaded. So any part of the world where you are at any time, you're able to see a result declared at world level, at polling unit level, not just at world level, at polling units, not just world. So that to a great extent deals with the issues of rigging, ballots
matching, exactly. And you know, one other thing that this electoral bill will be addressing, we have some people who are right now senators sitting in the Senate. The returning officer declared the result and said, I'm declaring this result under duress. But the court says, because the Electoral Act 2010 says as soon as an election is declared, the electoral umpire does not have the power to upturn that election. It is only at the courts. So you give a responsibility to the electoral umpire to conduct election, but they don't have anything to say, any power to reverse it. So now what you have is that in the new Electoral Act, or by the time it becomes an act, in the new electoral bill, there's that window for the electoral umpire to review that announcement, because in 2019 that particular result was held. The return certificate was not given to the person. The person went to court, and the court says INEC does not have power to withhold that return. And today the person is a senator and he's sitting making laws for us after the returning officer had said this result was declared under duress. But with the new Electoral Act, such a thing cannot happen. INEC can set up a committee and investigate and review that process that led to the declaration of that result. And not only is that possible, the beavers, the equipment that they're going to use now for election, also helps you to determine how many people came to vote, how many people actually were accredited, how many people voted, and you can link that up with the result that you find on the beavers. I mean, on the viewing portal.
Okay.
Now, INEC has also gone a little bit step further. February 12th, there's going to be election in the FCT, about in the entire FCT areas that you have. INEC has come out to say, you remember last year they did delineation of polling units, added new polling units. About 523 polling units in Abuja does not have voters. 0 voters. Unlike in the past, they used to call these centers miracle centers, so that because you don't have 0 voters, materials will be deployed there, and so when results are called, you will see results being assigned to those areas where there are no voters. INEC has come out to give the list of those over 500 polling units where you don't have voters, and have said that they will not deploy single material or electoral officers to those polling units. So when you look at the election result viewing portal of INEC, and you look at those polling units, if you see any result there, then you can now begin to cry foul. So these are the things that this new electoral bill, if it becomes an act, will help us to emphasize and help to protect the integrity and integrity of our electoral processes. Okay.
Well, with all of these amendments that we are seeing, we are hopeful indeed to have a credible elections, but there are some other areas that may seem to be a drawback. For instance, if you look at cost of elections, there are some who have raised, observations that, look, this is getting out of hand. I mean, if you have the spending limit for presidential candidates to up to about 5 billion naira.
15 billion.
15 billion
yes,
rather.
Yes.
Now, and also, so goes for other offices as well. So, how is this going to help us really?
And the truth of the matter is that elections all over the world is not cheap, does not come cheap, true. But by the time you put that kind of ceiling for people to use to run election, a lot of credible people who want to be part of that process will not want to come out. And so we will continue to have issues around money politics. We'll continue to have issues around godfatherism, disenfranchising women, youth, younger people who want to be part of that, because they may not be able to raise that money. And you don't also expect an individual to have that kind of money. That's where you see the corporate organizations, they come in, they sign all the MOUs they are signing, and so as soon as the person gets into office, they begin to give out contracts that may eventually not even be implemented. So we have seen that. But what we need to do is for citizens to be on the ground. Now that the bill is now prescribing that for you to elect your presidential candidates, you need to have mini conventions in 37 centers. It means that even that 15 billion that we are talking about will not be enough. No. We know that people struggle to be delegates at elections, so that at the end of the day, they go back and buy cars, build houses, and do whatever they want to do. As far as you have been elected as a delegate, that's where the corruption starts from. Not really the people on the streets who vote and all of that. And we have also said that rather than political parties looking at how to sell their programs to the people on the street, what they are doing is that they are putting together a donor basket fund that they will use money for vote buying. So when you put such amount of money, legally, you're supposed to have an account, because at the end of the election, the political party is supposed to submit an audited report of the elections to INEC. And INEC would sit down and look at that and give a feedback on that. But we really have not had that happen. And then you now have this situation whereby people do that. Now, what do you use election funds for, truly? You have to put billboards, you need to pay that. You have to have party agents, you need to pay. Even though in some climes, they're supposed to be volunteers who, because they are party members, they believe in your dream, they're supposed to be volunteers who are doing that. But you have to pay them. You are having a convention, you need to pay for the venue of the convention. You need to pay party leaders. In fact, the way I was privileged to look at about 4 political parties. I was to do a presentation and I decided to look at 4 political parties' constitution. My brother, you need to see the different structures. The people, for a particular ward, you have more than 20 people who are executives of that ward. Because you identify national leader, you identify this leader, you identify that woman leader, that youth leader. All of them are kind of advisory at the different levels. So you have different committees. So that's why, and then some of these people are there because they want to make ends meet. Yes. So you need to be able to pay for all of this. And unfortunately, that's what we find ourselves. So, but what is advisable is this. If you want to run an election, you should be able to sell your program to the people. People should be able to contribute. 100 naira, 500 naira, you put that together.
Isn't it? Maybe something like a crowdfunding for people. So say, for instance, we have something about independent candidature.
Fortunately, we don't have that.
Even though we've tried to make that move and make it happen, it hasn't happened yet.
Yes.
You know, but hopefully that will also help, isn't it?
Yes.
And if we have such a person who is willing to contest, how does the person raise funds? You know, yes, we talk about crowdfunding, but how would the mobilization go? But
you see, the beauty about independent candidates or even running election in this country is that you can actually, the mistake I want to say that most political parties make is that they think that they can have national coverage. Not all the political parties have a national appeal. Not all of them. So you don't have to struggle to have a presidential candidate for every part. If you have a regional program or even a ward program where this particular ward in this local government area is agriculture, and we key in our program into this, developing that, you have a candidate and you are consistent. Put your candidate there. Win the elections in that ward. Those are some of the reforms we are looking at, so that people can have a situation whereby you have progress, focus on all of this. So you have political parties who have ideologies, who have programs, and not just because we want to win election. You know that we have 91 political parties in this country, and some of them don't even have a program. Some of them don't even have offices.
In fact, we don't hear about some of them until when it's time for election.
Exactly, until when it's time for election, and then you see somebody who has come out to say, "Oh, I want to be president of Nigeria." 2 weeks or 1 month of the election, say I decamp for the person in the other political party. Yes. Because initially, you know, you didn't even have an ambition. Yes, there was no plan at all. So the issue of independent candidate is good. Unfortunately, our constitution does not recognize that. It's also not in our electoral act. It's somewhere we wish we could go to, you know, get to. People who believe in themselves, or people around believe in this person, say this is the person we want to help us. But you know, it is one thing to say we want to submit this, support this person. You cannot support the person on social media. You cannot support the person verbally. You need to support the person financially. You need to back up the person. 100 naira will go a long way. If 2 people bring 100 naira, it becomes 200 naira. You cannot just say, "Oh, my son or my daughter go and contest election." I'm waiting for the person to steal national funds to bring it so I can give the person chieftaincy title to develop your village. If your community is saying, "Go and represent election," how much are they putting on the table to support that ambition? Because you need to pay for media, you need to pay for publicity, you need to print election materials, you need to travel, you need to go to places. You don't use water to run cars. You need petrol. And the man or woman will go to the filling station to buy the petrol. Now the prices are going up. He has to fuel all the cars that they will use for that. And it's money that they need. So if you are supporting anybody, we're not saying cage the person like the Godfather's Zoo. Cage the person and say, "I'm going to give you 2 billion naira to run an election." And then at the end of the day, you want to put people who will work for you. Like they do in commissioners. Some states, they have 25 commissioners, some 30 commissioners. You have elected the person that wants to bring up the list of people who will help to run the place. You say, "You know, I was one that funded your election. Out of 25, I'm giving you 24 commissioners." It doesn't work that way, and we cannot have progress.
So, in essence, the cost of, you know, spending limit, you know, for all the offices is justifiable given the realities of our time.
Yeah, it is. Maybe but people need to,
should look at how to raise funds.
Raise funds, yes, so that you don't lose one person.
Yes,
because the person will hold you to ransom. It becomes an investment, and the person needs to get return on investment.
True, true. But again, another issue of vote buying. You know, we have. It's becoming like a tradition now, you know, in our political atmosphere, where if you're contesting for something, once you go to speak to the people, you know, to support you and all of that, everybody's looking, "Oh, okay, so what are you bringing to the table? What are you going to give us?" You know, and all of that. What should Nigerians understand as we head, you know, as we approach the 2023 elections.
True, vote buying has become a sore point in our electoral history, and for every election, especially every off-season election, you see different dimensions to it. We went to one of the off-season elections, and the slogan then was "Vote and make a pot of soup," because people were paid as much as 4,000 naira, 5,000 naira, and that is because the political class have truly failed us. You elect somebody with a list of things he or she has promised that they will do for you in the first 100 days, in the first 1 year, and that. And then in the first 100 days, what you see is that they are buying motorcycles, they are buying keke, they are buying cars for people. They are not giving you the list. They are not ticking off those things they have promised to do for you. So Nigerians have said, okay, if you don't want to do this one for me, 4 years I will come. And then you have to give me my share of the cake before I can do something for you. But unfortunately, Nigerians are not wise enough to say 4,000 naira, 1,000 naira cannot buy my share of the cake for 1 year. Exactly. So if you begin to look at giving me $1 million or $2 million, you know, hey, I can say, okay, I can share that along the 4 years that you are going to be in the office. So, and that is why it has become a slap on the face of Nigerians. I tell people, your voter's card makes you the CEO of the country. And if you are CEO of a company and you don't know, you don't have a vision for your company, others will come and take it from you and your company will collapse. So if you are CEO of a company and you have your voter's card and you think that you want to sell your company for 1,000 naira, the last 2019 election, I tell you, in Abuja here, I went, I saw people collecting, this packet of cabin biscuits. They come and share it and give them 1 pure water and 500 naira. It's as bad as that. And people think that is what they will use to survive in the next 5 years. What we need to do as a people, knowing that we are CEOs, we have elected these people, we need to activate that power of the CEO of the country, Nigeria, because of your vote. If you don't have voter's card, you don't have any business. Because if you are 18, you're supposed to go and get a voter's card. It's not something somebody will pay you to go and get. So once they know that we're beginning to hold the National Assembly, like for instance, some of the laws that this present National Assembly have passed because there was citizen pressure.
Yes. Yes.
Continuous citizen pressure. So citizen pressure works. Positive citizen pressure. I'm not talking of going to destroy places or do continuous engagement and dialogue. Intellectual engagement. Bring a more positive idea and argument on the table and you floor anybody at any time.
That's very correct. Well, now let's take a little break, and then when we come back, we'll continue discussions on the program. Faith Nwadishi, the Executive Director, Center for Transparency and Advocacy, will still be with us in the studio. Stay with us. All right, thank you for staying with us. This is Issues, and the issues of focus today is on the Electoral Act, whether or not it is the magic one that will solve Nigeria's political woes, and that's what we've been discussing. I have in the studio Faith Nwadishi, the Executive Director, Center for Transparency Advocacy, here in the studio. Now, another issue of concern is whether this issue of inclusion, inclusion for women and youth, is something that is practical in the coming elections. Yes, we've seen the not too young to run bill scale through, but again, another thing to be worried about, like we've highlighted, is yes, not too young to run, but maybe too poor to run. Looking at the needs to, that we have to, go to the word, do this, do that, and all of that. So how do we ensure inclusion as we approach the coming election?
The first thing is to get the political party leadership to agree that there's need for inclusion. Not because you have it in one line in your constitution where you say there will be respect for gender and young people. But to sit down and agree that out of 10 people, 20% must be young people, 20% must be women. The others can come to do that. You come out to the public and because you want votes from people, you say, oh, everybody can run, or we have the young, the not too young to run law. How many political parties fielded young people? Because for you to become a candidate, you have to go through primaries. That is where it comes from. It's not Nigerians that will impose your candidate on you. It's not INEC that will impose your candidate on you. It is you, the political party leadership, that will bring out your candidates and present to the people. So you have young people who are members of your political party, but because they are not in the good books of the party leaders, or they are not able to pay the bills of the party leaders, you think they are not good enough to rule. But they are good enough to run errands, they are good enough to do all these other things. But when it comes to becoming candidates, you don't bring them. So this issue should be put squarely on the table of party leaders. Because if party leaders don't agree to field young people, they don't agree to field women, women will not be there. They will not be there. They will only go, they tell you, okay, we are giving women free forms. Free forms. Let's assume they say form is 5 million naira. Yes. I'm telling you something, practically. Yes. They will go there, come to the public and say free forms. You may not have paid that 5 million naira, but you must pay party chairman and the executive. You must give them something. You must go to all the wards and see the party executives. Is it granite that you are going to give them? You will give them money. It's part of the money. So when you come, they look at it, so the highest bidder. And that's why you see people who have been members of a political party for years. They have not been fielded as candidates of a political party. But you see somebody having made so much money, comes to the political party, brings money, and tomorrow the person is the candidate of the political party. We have these laws, but it's not implemented. There is no law that says if party A, you have 10 candidates, 20 or 30% of your candidates must be women. 30 or this one candidates must be youth, young people. If they now bring their candidates and you don't have this, you can take them to court. But there's no penalty for what they are doing.
Do you think that that's something that maybe the Electoral Act should maybe look at?
The Electoral Act,
maybe in the future.
The Electoral Act can look at it. But if the party constitution, if the people are not ready to hold the parties accountable, because what they now do, you now see a governor who will go and have 125 special assistants. One is youth representative, women representative, and you have all of that. That is different from elective position.
And you know, one other issue is that we see a lot of young people on social media, you know, complain about marginalization and not being included in the whole process and all of that. But you see very little of their engagement, you know, politically. Mostly it's more on the social media. So looking at the influence of social media and how much it has demonstrated that it can mobilize youth, especially if you look at the NSAS protest, you know, back in 2020. How can young people take advantage of, you know, platforms like that to mobilize support for themselves ahead of the elections?
People don't win elections on social media. I said that earlier. If you're supporting somebody, it's not social media. You must come out physically, because we don't cast votes on social media. The first thing to do as a Nigerian person who is 18 years and above, first and foremost, to identify that you have a responsibility. Your number one civic responsibility is to go and register and have your voter's card and enroll yourself as the CEO of the country. If you don't have that, you can shout, you can have 1 million followers on social media. 1 million followers, and that's your one vote. You didn't come to vote. It doesn't make any sense. So the first thing to do is the young people to mobilize themselves and use this period of voter registration. Go and register and get your voter's card. That's the first thing. Then use that influence that you have on social media. Show people your voter's card. On the day of election, carry your camera. Show people that you have come out to vote. You don't necessarily need to say, this is the person I voted for. I have come out to vote. I have come out to conduct my civic responsibility. That's the way you can influence people. But not that on election day, you are looking for one breaking news somewhere. So you go and change the picture, do it, and do fake news on social media because you want people to follow you. The young people must come out. As a young person myself, growing up, even from I was a member of the student union movement. I joined to make sure that all the practical things, I was part of it. You understand what I'm saying? Follow up, not just be in your bedroom and write things and don't come out to be part of the process. Before you can get political party candidature, you have to be a member of a political party.
True. True. And now, okay, another issue, that I think is also of concern. Each time we talk about elections, again, another issue, zoning comes to play, when presidential candidates are coming out, we're already seeing discussions in the path of, is he coming from the south, is he coming from the north, and all of that. So how is that a problem to us, and why do we need to tackle it headlong as we approach this election?
Well, I think because of the fact that in so many ways we just mistrust each other. A lot of people, if you want to take a census of people who are actually very patriotic, you are not able to get the numbers of people who are very patriotic. The political class, they don't trust themselves, even. The Constitution does not recognize the issue of zoning, even though we talk about federal character. We talk about federal character just to have a balancing in all of that. The Electoral Act does not look at the issue of zoning, because in actual fact what you do is, in every election you want the best. You want the best of the best to come out with the support of everybody. But the politicians, they have what they call a gentleman's agreement. They say, oh, after these 4 years or 5 years, it's going to come from this zone, like my state in Delta State. I think it has worked very well. You have 3 senatorial districts, and in the last 20 years, you have had governors from the 3. The last governor now is from one of the last ones, so it's like it's going back to rotate again. But the problem is that even after this agreement that this person is going to come from this zone, this person is going to come from this zone, during the process of trying to elect who, everybody from everywhere also are part of that process. Let's assume this time you say, oh, this is going to come from the north, this is going to come from the south. The process of choosing who, you have people from the north, you have people from the south within that same political party vying for a particular position. That issue of zoning helps to bring about stability in the country. But again, the issue of nepotism and all of that takes it, because you have people say, oh, it is our turn, oh, now my brother did there, now my sister did there, this is our own, make we not slack. You understand what I'm saying? So it doesn't balance even in the development of things. But when you bring out the best, the person knows that I came from amongst good people, but I was chosen. You want to do the right thing because you know that we hold you accountable irrespective of where you are from, and you make your people proud. You make your people. I've had statements like, oh, this person was from this zone, but he didn't do anything for the people. This person was from this zone. Until we change that kind of thinking and begin to think of Nigeria as a project, as one project, so that we can move forward, I think.
But how do we change that? Especially if you look at the role of political parties in this. We are getting feelers that, say, for instance, a party like the APC have already zoned its national chairmanship to the north central part of the country, where you have multitude of people contesting for that seat, but maybe only 4 will eventually come out, for that seat and then be voted for. So how is the role of political parties in changing this idea? Yes, when it comes to, general elections, they say, well, zoning is really not important. There's no, but then when they go back to their political parties, in their parties, they talk about zoning and all of that. So it appears that it is still there somewhere, as a principle that we run with. So
that's why I said that even the politicians, they say they don't trust themselves. They say one thing is like, do as I say, not as I do. Do as I say, not as I do. And the issue of, because for us to have even this zoning correct, that will help our development, or to come up with the best candidate, the first thing I keep saying to political parties is to go back and look at their constitution and implement the words of their constitution in party internal democracy, number 1. If the constitution, even if the constitution says there will be rotational leadership, maybe from zone A, zone B, zone C, zone that, and we are going to transform that also in choosing our party candidates, I'm telling you, there will be no need for people to just spend money unnecessarily. What people will do is to line up behind that zone or that area and then support that person. So you don't need one person to go and bring out 15 billion. To say because I want to run election. But when you have agreed to say zone A is going to bring out a particular candidate, and you now have candidates from zone B, zone C, zone D, that's where you begin to have issues.
In any case, how do we even build trust, when we're having these discussions? Because part of the reasons why those who are, canvassing for zoning is, this issue about national cohesion, national unity. How do we feel like we are part of the system? How do we feel like we have a stake in this? So how can we, develop that trust and, ensure that everyone feels that sense of belonging in our politics?
I think the first thing is very simple, my brother. The first thing is to have some of these things that we have written. I'm not saying bring new ones. So the ones we have written, can we just be faithful to those ones we have written? Can we stop looking for a loophole? Can we stop that? If both of us now have agreed that after this 20 minutes or 30 minutes we are talking, if you say this one, somebody else will come onto this seat and say, what happens is that after by the 19th minute, 1 minute to your 20 minutes, you're already finding what loophole to ensure that that second person is not coming, so that you will continue there in perpetuity. What we need to do is first agree on these dotted lines we have written down, practice it, and be faithful to it. Once we're able to practice that over time, all of these things are taken care of. Because it is greed and selfishness that, you see, for a democracy, what means that everybody must have a sense of belonging. Everybody must have, and having a sense of belonging is also having a sense of responsibility. Give people responsibility, that this is your responsibility to take us to the next level. After you have taken us to the next level, this is the person that will take us. Some professional organizations, they do it perfectly. Once an election is held and a leader is elected, on that day of election, you already know the person who is going to take over for that person. So that person, the person who is leader, begins to mentor the next leader. So you don't have issues around abandoned projects. It's a continuity. It's not about, oh, it is my name that must be there. It is, I'm the one that did that, I'm the one. And when we take away that from us, it's difficult because we are humans. Everybody wants to shine. Everybody wants to be known. Everybody wants to have his name or her name written on gold. But you see, those people who had their names written on gold did not do it alone, because there's a team, and did not stay there in perpetuity. So you need to be able to mentor people. Number one, in the political system, we don't have mentors. They're not mentoring. Even the young people who are in the political party, they're not mentoring them. You can only be mentored and be moved forward if you are a sycophant. You are praising in good, in bad, in everything. You are praising 100%. Oh, you are the best. They are nothing. In fact, in those states where I grew up, they have a street balance. I will say it in Edo and I will translate it. It says, Umana loya, uryoya. It means that if you are not loyal, you will suffer. So in order for I not to suffer, I will be loyal. No, and if it means loyalty, it means me putting my head on the ground, you stepping onto it, I will be loyal.
In fact, that's also another issue. I mean, this loyalty, concept, if you tie that to the godfatherism in our politics.
Exactly.
How much of a problem is that, really?
A very big problem. A very big problem. Because what is the role of a godfather in the real sense of it? A godfather is supposed to be like a mentor. Somebody who has your best interest in heart, who wants to make sure you excel. In fact, your godfather wants you to do better than him or her, so that when you excel, he or she takes the glory to say, I mentored that person, I made that person.
It's not entirely wrong, the concept in itself, this godfatherism.
The concept of God, yes, it's not about the way we are practicing it. The way we are practicing it. If you have a godfather now and you are in office, before you take a decision, you have to go back to your godfather and say, please, I want to take this decision. Is it in your good books or in your favor that I should take this decision? Even though I know that this decision, this is what I should do because I'm the one wearing the shoe, it pinches me, I should know. So if your godfather says, no, let me give it a thought and see about it, you don't take a decision, even if it means life and death of somebody, because you take that decision, you'll be tagged as not loyal.
I mean, this is why some people have gained popularity. Now, let's talk about also another, issue linked to this issue of violence in elections. There are people who are sort of demigods, when it comes to elections, and nothing passes through except they give their nod, and consent. You find them in different zones. They're like territorial.
They're everywhere. They're everywhere.
Some of them. Well, let me not say.
They're
let me not say
everywhere.
further. But I mean, they are everywhere.
Yes.
So how do we deal with this? Is this something that can be taken? I mean, definitely there are laws, against these things. But most times we find that it's difficult to implement some of these laws because, of course, again, you have godfathers who will make a phone call and say, "Hey, it's my boy, let him go," something like that.
It's quite unfortunate. I was almost a victim of that. I went to observe elections in Kogi, myself and my team, and we escaped just like this. We're almost burnt. For being an observer, I'm not an INEC official, I'm not a politician. I went there to observe elections. And they almost burnt myself and my team in our vehicle in Kogi State, the last Kogi election. So what has happened is that you have election entrepreneurs. You have violence entrepreneurs who wait every 4 years. You see them, as soon as elections are done, they go into incubation. As soon as elections are coming up, you see them. Different posters, different groups. Now, some of them even come as civil society groups, coalition of civil society. They come without any name. At times, you see them on TV and you wonder, where did these people come? Where did these people come from? Who is funding them to do this kind of a thing? So you see them doing all of those kind of things, and they are recruiting people. Now, this is where the responsibility on citizens come in, because these people are our people. We know them. They live in our communities. That is the responsibility for the people. We went to an off-season, a by-election in Anambra some years ago. And the police had said they were going to deploy X number of security agents. But we went to the communities. What did we see? On the polling units, we saw old men and women sitting on benches, protecting their polling unit, their votes. The youth were there. We didn't see a single security agent there. And there was not a single report of violence in that place. So it is a collective responsibility for everybody on this issue of violence. If somebody gets into office through violence, do we have to commend that person by giving the person the return certificate to go and lead us and perpetuate more violence? Now, during election, you see that there's proliferation of small arms. And it is difficult to bring back those small arms. After every election, just about 6 months after election, you see escalation of violence around areas where elections have happened. Our security agents, what are they doing? What are the intelligence reports that they get out of that? It is the same election you will go. You will see somebody perpetrating an electoral fraud or something that is described in our electoral act as an electoral offense. You call a police officer, say, what this man is doing is not right. He said, that is not what I have been sent here to do.
It looked the other way.
Yes, it looked the other way. That is not what I've been sent here to do. So when you as a police officer is saying that, what am I supposed to do as a civilian? So we perpetuate that. What we need to do is mobilize our young people. Mostly they're the young people, and I like the campaign that Two-Face DBA carries on during these elections. I want more of that kind, and that's even the media too. All of us, we need to add our voices, because our young generation during elections, you are not fielded as a candidate for election, but they recruit you as a thug for election, and you're happy to do that. At the end of the day, who loses?
So people must frown at criminality.
People must frown at criminality.
Instead of celebrating it.
Instead of celebrating it. And communities also, our communities, we know that this person harbors thugs, brings guns, and all of that. And the person wins election, the next thing we're giving the person chieftaincy title. What we have said is that, because in my place there's a saying that when you have done well, they expect you to do better. And then they'll not say, thank you for the one you have done so that I can do better. So when you commend somebody and give him or her a chieftaincy title for having come into power through violence. What we're telling the person is next time do times 2.
Well, well, thank you so much. We have to end the discussion here. We thank you for coming and sharing your perspectives with us on this program. We look forward to having you again.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, we've been speaking with Faith Nwadishi, Executive Director, Center for Transparency Advocacy, here, giving us, you know, all of these interesting insights. For you to catch up, you can always go to our YouTube and also connect with us via our social media. With that, we've come to the end of Issues for this week. Join us again next week for another time on the program. My name is Ayuba Ilya. Thank you for watching.